A flamboyance. That's what you call a group of flamingos. Elephants herd in a parade. A group of zebras is called a dazzle. Whatever the name, being part of a group has advantages. Hanging with the herd fends off predators, helps with mating, and sometimes it makes it easier to bring up baby. Forget privacy. From day one, the world for a Chilean flamingo is a busy place. The same goes for flamingos at a zoo. And a 2-week-old chick like Tweedle might get lost in the shuffle. He lives at Reid Park Zoo in Tucson, Arizona.
When flamingo chicks first hatch, they are white little puffballs, and they've got black legs and black bills. As they get older, that down gradually starts to turn gray. At about 40 days, they start getting feathers.
It'll be a while before Tweedle turns pink, but right from the get-go, he's displaying his personality.
So this chick is a little more apprehensive about coming off the nest than our previous chicks have been. It took Tweedle over a week before it felt comfortable coming off the nest and exploring, but this one's gonna stick closer to mom and dad than our previous chicks did.
That cautious attitude should suit both of Tweedle's protective parents just fine.
With flamingos, both mom and dad help take care of the chicks. So they both help to build the nest, they both sit on the egg.
The parents pile up a mound of mud to raise it above the water level to protect the egg. There's no risk of flooding here at the zoo, but the behavior is instinctive. A female flamingo will only lay 1 egg a season, so the male and female go to great lengths to keep it safe. With so many flamingos around, that's not easy to do.
They like to live in very large flocks, and they stay very close together, but they're constantly squabbling. They're always kind of chirping at each other and kind of just giving little knocks on the head to each other.
While a crowded group life may lead to squabbling, the flamingo's mating ritual, especially in the wild, is a striking display. It's truly flamboyant.
For flamingos to have successful breeding, they have a very weird behaviors that they do as a flock. So they march around, they do these wing salutes, they do a thing called head flagging, where they all turn their heads at the same time.
Flamingos really have the hang of group living, which is as essential at the zoo as it is in the wild. If there are fewer than 15 flamingos in a zoo, it's a problem.
If they don't have enough of them, they won't build nests and they won't lay eggs. So it's really important to have enough flamingos in order to make them feel comfortable enough to breed.
Once a chick is born, flamingo parents share other duties like feeding. Adults produce what's known as cropped milk and pass it into a youngster's beak.
Tweedle, as you can see, has a very different bill than the parents have. His is much smaller and pointier. But as he gets older, at about 40 days, that bill's gonna start to curve down, so he has the same type of bill as mom and dad.
When Tweedle is an adult, that banana shape will pay off at mealtime.
Flamingos have a unique way of eating where they'll stick their head in the water and it's upside down.
Their beaks are like big scoops and gather in everything, including muddy water. When their beaks close, the morsels of food stay in, but their tongues move quickly to push the water out. This filtering technique lets them eat tiny crustacean and insect larvae, which are the reason behind the flamingo's distinctively colored feathers. The shrimp and mollusks are loaded with beta-carotene, the same stuff that makes carrots orange. That makes its way through the flamingo's bloodstream and into their feathers. The zoo can only give them some of the same food they'd find in the wild, so they also have a supplement.
There's a very special diet that we buy that's specifically for flamingos, and this has all the nutritional things that they need in it, as well as the same type of pigments in it that will help keep them pink.
Becoming and staying pink are important, especially for the males. Pale flamingos are not as attractive to females as really pink flamingos. Tweedle won't turn pink for at least a couple of years, but he is developing another hallmark of flamingos, the one-legged pose.
It's mostly for comfort. If you think about how when a person stands, when they're just standing in one place for a long time, they usually put their weight on one leg or the other. The only difference is the flamingos lift that leg up.
Other research suggests it helps the birds conserve body heat. Tweedle's a quick study, but he's still timid. While another flamingo waits for her egg to hatch, little Tweedle stays close, under the watchful eye of his parents. As close as Tweedle can get. They're just a couple of weeks old, so these 3 reindeer calves, named Daisy, Aster, and Sawyer, are still getting comfortable moving about. They're not ready to pull a sleigh from the North Pole, but it won't be long until they can try.
When reindeer are first born, they weigh about 10 pounds, and within their first hour are able to walk around and keep up with mom, and then after a day, they're able to outrun a human.
Reindeer are found in many northern countries. The ones at the Assiniboine Park Zoo in Winnipeg, Manitoba, are Eurasian tundra reindeer. In North America, they're also known as caribou. One of the most important instincts Daisy, Aster, and Sawyer will develop is to shadow their mothers.
In the wild, the babies need to learn herd mentality so that they know to stay with the herd, since there is safety in numbers. They'll go between cycles of walking around to look for a different grazing area, and then they'll switch into a resting mode, and they all tend to follow one leader.
Reindeer or caribou herds head north in the summer. That's when they're drawn to the tundra, which is lush with grasses and plants. It's a massive migration, a journey of hundreds of kilometers. Reindeer stand out in the deer family for other reasons too. They are the only species of deer in which females can have antlers.
Both male and female babies will start developing their antlers within 2 to 3 weeks of being born. And when they first start out, they'll just be little nubs that's on the top of their head.
It might be hard to tell, but little bumps are starting to emerge on Daisy's head. You won't need to squint at those nubs long. Reindeer have the second largest antlers of any deer, after moose.
Antlers are made of bone, and they grow from the top of the skull. They grow forward from the tips, and to help them grow, they get a velvet skin layer that helps deliver blood and nutrients to them as they grow.
Male reindeer lose their antlers at the beginning of the winter. They regrow later that same season, and by the time summer comes, they can measure up to 1 meter long and weigh more than 20 kilograms. Female reindeer, on the other hand, keep their antlers through winter until spring. So those big, brave reindeer guiding Santa's sleigh, like Donner, Dasher, and Rudolph, are all females. Reindeer shed more than their antlers. When the weather turns warm, they don't need the protection of their heavy winter coat. So off it comes. A shorter, darker coat will come through for the summer months. Living in large herds can sometimes lead to confusion.
Sometimes the babies will go to the wrong mom, and they'll try and nurse off her. But often the mom will shoo them off so that she has enough milk for her calf. The calves will stay with the mom and drink milk for the first month almost exclusively, and after that, they'll start to graze.
Sawyer is a hungry little thing. Reindeer milk will take care of that. It's one of the richest milks of any land mammal. It's got 22% butterfat, compared to cow's milk at 4%. After these babies are weaned, it's onto solid food. In the wild, that means lichens.
The snow will cover the lichens that they eat, and they have to be able to detect where they are in order to dig down to get to them.
A very good sense of smell helps the reindeer find the buried food. But there is another helpful adaptation that scientists believe is unique to this mammal. Reindeer have special vision, which allows them to better see lichens in the dim light of the Arctic winter.
Recently, scientists have discovered that reindeer can see UV light.
Their keen eyesight also helps them avoid competition.
The UV light will help them see traces of pea or fur, which will allow them to see if there's other reindeer in the area that might be competing with them for food, or it'll help them better pick out predators such as wolves that are camouflaged in the snow.
Daisy, Aster, and Sawyer are happy just to see Mum.
When they wake up and they notice they're a little bit further from Mom, they'll start crying for Mom, making a honking sound to get her attention.
These little calves will grow up quickly. Until then, sticking with Mum is a wise step. It might not be obvious at first, but elephants and humans have a lot in common. They're emotional, intelligent, and highly social. Like humans, elephants also take a long time to grow up, and growing up means constantly learning. That's certainly the case with Nandi, a 14-month-old elephant that lives with her family at the Reid Park Zoo in Tucson, Arizona. Just a few months earlier, when Nandi was about 8 months old, she stuck close to her mom, Semba.
Nandi was staying a little closer to Mom, so she was a little less confident, more concerned with how close she was to her mom. She would frighten a little more easily and run back to Mom and check in with her.
Nandi was learning how to be an elephant, experimenting with her trunk, timidly stepping into the pool, and figuring out her place in the family. In the wild, Nandi might be part of an all-female herd led by an experienced matriarch. The herd would nurture her and eventually teach her how to raise calves on her own. In the zoo, she's getting both the nurturing and education from all of the members of her family. There's Dad, Mabu, Mum, Semba, and 3 siblings, 8-year-old Punga, 4-year-old Sunju, and of course, Nandi. Lunjil is another adult female who helps with the youngsters. It's a big family, and each of the elephants has a role to play.
We can see how our herd works together in that the kids, the young elephants, play all day, but when they get really rowdy, oftentimes one of the adults will come, and often it's Mom who might discipline one sibling or one of the brothers for being too rough on Nandi.
Nandi doesn't seem to mind. As she gets older, she wants to play with her big brothers and doesn't want to be left out of the fun, even if it means pushing herself.
The pool's a little bit frightening to a baby elephant initially, and so she's becoming brave, curious, and independent swimming on her own.
Her family's showing her the ropes. She's learning from them, just like human babies do.
So Nandi's learning how to interact with her environment in part from her siblings and her mom, so she does watch them and she mimics them. And then the other thing that's interesting is because she's curious, she tries new things. And sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't.
Playing increases her confidence, but she's also just more sure-footed.
She runs more smoothly, flaps her ears more confidently, and some of that is just growing into her body.
Nandi can also use her feet to communicate. Researchers know that elephants in the wild can send and receive messages through very low-frequency sounds. These also travel as vibrations through the ground. So an elephant across the savanna might send a warning call, and another might hear it, but also get the news through a rumble it feels through its feet or trunk. At the zoo, Nandi and her family are close together, but they still communicate in the same way.
They also do have lots of vocalizations that we can't hear. So sometimes we'll watch their behavior and we suspect that they're rumbling at these low frequencies that we can't hear, and they're saying something to one another based on their body postures.
Just as human babies become more nimble with their fingers, elephants become more agile with their trunks.
Nandi's trunk, when she was a very young elephant, it was as though she had a spaghetti noodle hanging from her face. When she would run, it would just flop around, where now she really is becoming quite skillful at using it.
Nandi's trunk is now less spaghetti and more of a fine tool that can help her get what she wants. That's because a network of muscles gives her incredible control over her trunk's movements. Nandi and her mom use their trunks to stay in touch. Sometimes Semba gives Nandi a friendly nudge. Other times, they share food. So, Nandi's trunk is a nose, a hand, a voice, and a straw, all in one. And her mom's is still an occasional blanket. Nandi still has a lot of learning to do. But now that she's 14 months old, it's easy to see the changes.
She's become much more independent and curious and charges right ahead of mom and doesn't worry about how close her mom is following her.
But she's still a toddler. And, like all toddlers, she knows exactly where mom is when she needs her. This baby zebra, Graham, looks all right now. But 4 months ago, his handlers at Newquay Zoo in Cornwall, England, were concerned.
But baby had just been born and was still wet, and they take a few hours just to get up on their feet, but he slipped a little bit.
It could have been the handlers who were wobbly. After all, it was all new to them. Graham was the first zebra calf ever born at the zoo.
So it was a little bit dramatic, but we managed to get him up and stand him up, and as soon as he was on his feet, he was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Graham was fine. Like other foals, he was able to walk about 20 minutes after birth. Graham's arrival was a happy surprise for someone else, his mother. Typically, a zebra mare is able to reproduce from age 2 until 15. Graham's mother is already 14 years old, but Graham is her first foal.
I think zebra will produce up to 20 years old, but probably in the wild, an older animal like that, anything beyond 15 is probably getting a little bit too old to reproduce. And they would have already produced 3 or 4 or 5 youngsters by then.
Graham is a Chapman zebra, a subspecies of the plain zebra that's found in the grasslands of southern Africa. It's a wide-open habitat with a range of animals, including large predators. So zebras stay in herds because there's greater safety in numbers. Mares must separate to give birth, but rejoin the herd as quickly as possible. Even at the zoo, Mom is very protective of the latest addition to the herd.
She is quite defensive. If you watch her, she'll very often stand between the other 2 zebra and the foal, and she does exactly the same with us. She looks upon them as the same she does with the keepers. So she can be quite defensive over him, but only if you get a little bit too close.
Graham's safe here. And he's healthy, too.
Well, this is an interesting thing on the growth rate of the zebra. Because this is the first one we've bred at the zoo, we were quite surprised on how quickly he grows. And they appear to grow very quickly at an early stage to become big and strong and be able to get away from predators. And then it seems to slow up.
Graham will mature quickly. He might head a tightly knit family group of female zebra and their foals, called a harem. For now, Graham is getting along just fine with the other zebras in the zoo.
Zebra's very sociable. He's mixed very well with the other girls, the other female zebra in there.
He's also getting used to other species that he would encounter on the savannah.
We have wildebeest and an Inyala antelope, but so far we haven't mixed them. We're very careful when they're very young to actually be, not to mix them too much with the other animals. He has actually mixed with the Inyala antelope, which are quite calm, but the wildebeest can be difficult. So far we're just holding back a little bit.
Graham will eventually mix with them. Wildebeest are a natural partner in the wild, essentially traveling companions.
Large herds of them actually migrate with wildebeest and other antelope, and they follow the rains. As the rains go and the rich grass is ahead of them, then they graze it all the way and then come back again.
For zebras, wild or captive, eating grass or hay is about quantity, not quality.
Zebra actually graze constantly. They don't eat lots and lots of rich food. In the wild, it's very seasonal. You get a dry season and a wet season, and they'll put a lot of weight on, and the foals are often born in the wet season. In captivity, we have to try and replicate that. Certainly this time of year, this is in their austere time of the year where there isn't a lot of great grazing. So we basically feed them on good quality hay and very little else.
At 2 weeks of age, Graham started to chew grass.
The grazing with the youngster actually has surprised us, because at 2 weeks old, we noticed that he was picking at grass and starting to eat a little bit. And this was a little bit of a concern, because from the keeper's point of view, they had to ask the vet, you know, is this normal? Because is he getting enough milk? Is he looking for other food? And apparently with all equids, including domestic equids, they do start to pick at grass from 2 to 3 weeks old. It doesn't mean to say they're getting lots of nutrition from it. It just means that they're starting to pick it out of the ground.
And what about Graham's stripes? There are many theories about why zebras are striped. The most common one is that they act as a type of camouflage.
Basically, large herds of zebra will all run together, and it's very difficult to distinguish the one end of a zebra from the other in a large herd.
But in fact, new research suggests that a zebra's stripes might be a deterrent to biting flies, which can spread diseases. Scientists have found that hungry flies find them unappealing to land on. They think it has to do with the way the fly's eyes see the tight striped pattern. Researchers may never get to the bottom of this mystery, but Graham's stripes will continue to dazzle anyone who sees him. These baby animals all need to live within large groups in order to survive. Sometimes it's essential for mating. Other times, it's a good defense strategy. Big families can also help to raise little ones. For these animals, social living is simply second nature. All primates, including humans, share a common ancestor. Our stories diverged millions of years ago, but we still have lots in common. Physical traits, social bonds, smarts, raising cute babies. From primitive lemurs to the more highly evolved orangutan, each member of our primate family can shed light on how we got to be human. Off the coast of Africa, on the island of Madagascar, lemurs bound from tree to tree. Even though they're now native to just one island on the planet, they're related to every human on Earth. lemurs are the most distant living primates from humans on the primate family tree. Just think of them as cousins, a million times removed. When we look at lemurs, we can see common characteristics we share with our earliest primate ancestors, like physical traits and the origins of our social behavior. This baby crowned lemur is Sishen. She's a natural-born leader.
She's the first one running out into the forest. She's not shy about that. She is not an animal that sort of sits in the background and waits.
It's the crest, or crown, on her head that gives her the name crowned lemur. Like all females, Sishen and her mom are mostly gray, while the males, her brother and dad, are more rust-colored. These crowned lemurs are one of more than 20 species of lemurs at the Duke Lemur Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a sanctuary and living laboratory. Scientists there are studying lemurs. The first lemurs lived in the forests of Africa, but they ended up in Madagascar.
There are no lemurs on that island more than 60 million years ago. And right around 60 million years ago, they popped up. And the lemur that came out of the fossil records sort of looked like a fat-tailed dwarf lemur.
How they ended up on Madagascar is still a bit of a mystery, but here's one theory. Some species of lemurs can go to sleep for days on end, almost like hibernating bears. It's called torpor. Tree trunk hollows make good nests, so picture some very sleepy lemurs millions of years ago in a tree in Africa. Now imagine a big storm that sweeps the tree out to sea.
With these lemurs inside, it's called a rafting theory, and they actually floated to Madagascar while they were torporing.
The tree lands on the coast of Madagascar, and the lemurs wake up to a forested paradise.
So they've evolved on the island all by themselves, and they have not left the island. So that's why we can only find Persimian lemurs on Madagascar.
So the theory goes. We do know the lemurs that remained in Africa died out, while the group in Madagascar thrived, producing descendants like Sishen. These crowned lemurs are perfectly adapted to the trees, like our common ancestors. Their long tails may look showy, but they're essential for balance. Many common primate traits are seen in lemurs. Their shoulders are flexible so they can climb and swing. Their hands can grasp branches. Those are abilities that all primates share, including us. Lemurs use vocal communication, also common to all primates. Scientists believe that lemur calls have several roles, including helping to improve social bonds between members of a clan. So it's possible that gossip among humans came from our primate ancestors as a means of improving our social connections. The lemur's vocalizing is also useful across vast distances in the forest. Crowned lemurs have a throaty alarm call.
And they go, "Pwah, pwee." That's another one. That's a crowned lemur sound. That's very different than all the other lemurs.
Many of their calls simply mean, "Come here." For lemurs, there's safety in numbers. Like all primates, lemur babies take a long time to raise. So living in a social group provides protection and maximizes their chance of survival.
There's more eyes to look out for an aerial predator or for a ground predator. It also helps take care of the infants. Infants learn from their siblings. So if you leave the youngest member far behind or mom's way off ahead, there's no learning, there's no protection in the group.
Lemur social groups, however, have evolved differently than many other primate groups. Female crowned lemurs have all the power.
That's very much an important part of a young female learning from her mother how to be dominant, how to be in charge. Don't be afraid to take that piece of food from your brother.
The females are willing to fight for food. They need it more to sustain pregnancy, so males back off.
So it's got to be a tough life being a male lemur because you're at the bottom of that pecking order.
Sishen is already learning that she can get away with a lot. Sishen's ancestors are our ancestors. They set up camp in Madagascar at least 60 million years ago. But the primate party didn't stop there. Moving closer to humans on the primate family tree, monkeys. Primates can be found all over the world. But which primates made it to the Americas first? It was these guys, monkeys. All the other guys claim to have been first. Columbus, Vespucci, the Vikings, the Chinese, even the Native Americans, who were definitely here before the Europeans. All latecomers. Exactly how monkeys arrived here from Africa is still up for debate. But the fossil record doesn't lie. Monkeys flourished in the Americas roughly 30 million years ago, long before humans popped up. And they're a valuable chapter in the story of primate evolution on the journey toward humans. Squirrel monkeys are evolved from those early pioneers.
Squirrel monkeys are New World monkeys, and that means they're from South America. So they're found quite widely throughout South America in the kind of central and northern parts, so, in big countries like Brazil.
This isn't the rainforest or the streets of Brazil. This is Edinburgh Zoo. A colony of common squirrel monkeys and their counterparts, the capuchins, hang out at the Living Link Center.
The main point of research here at the Living Link Center is to look at the behaviour of the monkeys, how their brains work, and how that can link into looking how humans might have evolved.
In squirrel monkeys, we can see shared characteristics in vision and social behavior. There's lots of opportunity to learn about this species' development from a young age. That's because 2 boys and 2 girls were recently born here. The babies share the same dad, but have different mums. Female squirrel monkeys can only have 1 baby at a time, and it's hard to tell the difference between adults and babies. That's because they're all small, standing about 30 centimeters fully grown. Their tails are longer than their bodies. Babies look like mini adults as soon as they're born. They're fully furred and can open their eyes, although they're a third of the size. Researchers know that, like humans, female squirrel monkeys can see in full color. Some males can see only 2 colors. One theory is that color vision evolved so that primates could find fruit more easily. It's led to a greater understanding of human vision. For the squirrel monkeys, being able to see each other in color is also handy.
It could be to attract a mate. It's basically showing off how fit and healthy they are by having a nice glossy, colourful coat.
Here, zookeepers attach brightly colored necklaces to identify female adults. And if you want to know who's a baby, it's the one riding a slightly bigger monkey. The littler ones do a lot of that, but they're getting braver.
They're spending a lot of time off their mums, exploring the enclosure. They're really agile and nimble animals, so they're really good at climbing about on the branches.
Like humans, squirrel monkey moms want their children to learn to do things for themselves. Mums discourage clinginess as their babies grow, especially in baby boys. By 4 years old, the boys will be mature and will be given to other zoos to mate with other squirrel monkeys.
The females really want to encourage the youngsters to start getting more independent and fending for themselves a little bit.
In the wild, a dad's contribution is to protect the colony. Other members of a social group have human-like roles. For example, there are built-in nannies. Childless female adults help raise the young. Siblings help too.
Some of our females in there, these aren't their first babies, so they'll have an older sister or brother in the group, and they still have that bond with their mum, so they will come over and groom the baby or groom the mother, and it's all about reinforcing these social bonds with each other.
Play is also a big part of the way a squirrel monkey connects with his or her social group, like it is for humans.
It's a really good way of learning all the behaviours they need to learn for adult life. It's all about keeping on the move, looking for foods, looking for opportunities to, play with each other or groom each other.
Squirrel monkeys are agile and they're smart. They stick together to protect one another and to help raise their young, traits we can see in ourselves. On the journey to becoming human, squirrel monkeys bring us one step closer. Another monkey is even closer to humans on the primate family tree. On a wintry day, a mother's embrace gives her baby warmth and protection. But snow monkeys are already well prepared for the cold. Thick fur coats cover even the smallest baby. Adaptability is key in the story of primate evolution. It has made primates one of the most successful animal families on the planet. Snow monkeys live in a wide range of climates: cold, hot, and everything in between, just like humans.
Snow monkeys are found in most islands in Japan. There is a big variation between the islands. The most northerly is almost alpine and subarctic, and the most southerly are subtropical.
Snow monkeys, also known as Japanese macaques, are even more adaptable than most primates.
There are very few primate species that have such a diverse habitat, ecology, diet in the wild.
They're considered old world monkeys. 40 million years ago, these monkeys spread through Europe, Africa, and Asia. They evolved to spend more time on the ground rather than climbing in trees, a trait that brings them closer to humans in their physical development. This troop lives at Highland Wildlife Park near Aviemore, Scotland. Babies Gaichi, Goku, and Jen were born to 3 different mums. They're 6 months old and dependent on them. But 4 months earlier, during their first summer, they were absolutely tiny. Newborn macaques cling to their mums. But soon enough, they're off and running. They're also picking up essential social skills.
They'll start to learn a bit about what being in their troop is all about. So movement, body language, vocalizations, and little things like that.
Like all primates, they must master the art of giving and reading social cues.
So facial expressions are important because their hierarchy is very important. If they don't show the right facial expression, like a submissive grin, they could end up being in a fight for that reason.
They can make peace or avoid conflict altogether by grooming. keeping the females happy is a particularly good idea.
There's a strict hierarchy within Japanese macaques, and it's matriarchal. So females tend to form the main body of the family group.
One mother holds most of the power. In this group, it's Angara.
Her baby is a male, but she is the most dominant in the troop. She's the top-ranking female, and so her baby will become quite a dominant individual.
Social status dictates everything for these primates. Snow monkeys are mature around the age of 5. At that point, they'll only hang out with monkeys of the same rank. But until then, they have a few more options.
So the relationships that they form generally are older siblings, but also the same age group of babies that maybe would have been born the same year that they were. And they'll form those friendships for a long period of time.
They sure do make the most of their playtime, particularly in the water.
They're really strong swimmers, but because there's no need for them to swim in captivity so much, we tend to see it as a playful behaviour. So the babies particularly like jumping around and splashing in the water, and that's really funny in the summer months.
As summer ends, the babies are still near their moms. The females will protect their babies for the first 2 years of life. After that, the whole troop keeps watch on the young, for both discipline and protection. Like human babies, young macaques can develop at a more leisurely pace.
These guys are preyed on by a few species, so probably wild dogs, and maybe even birds of prey. So these guys can develop more slowly.
Just as well they have time. There's still a lot to master. Because mastery of environment, of social life, of expression, is something Japanese macaques must do to survive. And it signals a step forward in primate evolution. Finally, the branch on the family tree that includes us, great apes. This exhibit at the Phoenix Zoo is a big draw. Jiwa has something to do with that. He's a Bornean orangutan. Orangutan is Malaysian for person of the forest. The name suits these primates. Their expressions, the way they look and act, seems all too familiar to the people watching.
Did you see? Mama was curled up in a blanket saying, "Leave me alone." Yeah. What other mama does that? You. Yeah.
In the story of primate evolution, orangutans appear in the last chapter, the great apes. Humans are in there too. Jiwa is a recent entry. He's almost 2 and he's a handful.
He is still in his terrible twos, but he definitely is being more adventurous. He's moving around more.
No wonder Bess, his mom, wants downtime. She has 2 children in the family, Jiwa and his older, much more mature sister, Cassie. Similar to humans, bringing up orangutan babies takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. It's one of the things that separate great apes from other primates. Female orangutans have 4 babies or less in their lifetimes, and they spend the most time rearing those children.
Orangutans in general have one of the longest mother-infant bonds, and so they actually will care for the infant and explore that relationship for upwards the first 7 years.
Mothers teach their children a lot in those first 7 years, both in the wild and in captivity.
They have to learn boundaries. They have to learn their environment, what to eat, what is not acceptable, what can go into your mouth, what shouldn't go into your mouth.
Did you really have to get pink chalk on your lips today? Did you?
Maybe red chalk is one of those things that shouldn't go in Jiwa's mouth. Bess uses it to draw, but Jiwa sees it as a tasty snack. And he sees his sister, Cassie, as built-in entertainment.
he's looking at her as more of a playmate, maybe not necessarily then like a mother figure. So he is batting her a lot. He is, hanging on her. He does also seek comfort in her if he is unsure of something and she comes to take care of him. He does allow her to, which is wonderful.
It's Cassie's job to watch Jiwa. In the wild, young females like her help mom with child rearing.
Bess sometimes looks as Cassie as like a babysitter. It's like her break.
There is one way this family is different from orangutans in the wild. Dad, Mike, is around a lot more. Mom, Bess, lets him hang out with Jiwa. He's a very laid-back father. His telltale fatty cheek pads set him apart as the dominant male. If this family lived in the wild, Mike would be off roaming a much wider territory. Male orangutans, unlike male chimps and gorillas, tend to be loners. It's out of necessity. Orangutans eat fruit and it can be scarce. Not so in the zoo.
They have unlimited resources for food. They have unlimited veterinary care. They have unlimited water and shelter and all those things that allow them to be able to interact with each other that they wouldn't normally in the wild.
Like other primates, orangutans have long arms to swing in the branches and long fingers and toes to climb trees. Like all other great apes, they have no tails. Size and strength set the great apes apart too. Even little Jiwa.
When he was born, his grip on Bess's body, on her hair, to be able to hold his whole weight, which was only probably around 5 pounds or so. But to think 5 pounds and being able to hold it from the moment you're born, basically, is incredible.
The other thing that makes great apes stand out? Intelligence. Like bonobos, chimps, gorillas, and humans, orangutans use tools. These ones use them to get their food. They use blankets as shelter in the sun. And they communicate.
It's incredible. It's scary at times. I think there's times I even joke around about Bess, Jiwa's mom, how she can basically understand English.
The important thing is that Bess understands Jiwa. The bond between them is obvious. You can see the bond, too, when you look at other great apes like gorillas with their offspring, and chimpanzee babies that cling to their mums. The mother-child bond is unmistakable. These orangutans and all great apes have amazing stories to tell. Our primate family includes monkeys, apes, lemurs. Some are more primitive. Others are highly evolved. There are things we still have in common: raising babies, social connections, intelligence. In their stories, we can see ourselves.